Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today, India's Wild Side. And we are here today, he's broadcasting live from India with Suhail Gupta. Suhail has made his passion sharing the wonders of nature and especially tigers his full-time career. He started out as a naturalist guide at Tiger Tops Eco Lodge in Nepal's Royal Chitwan National Park and went on to manage the famous tented camp. He then became an assistant to Toby Sinclair in Delhi, who produced the landmark BBC series shot in India. That was The Land of the Tiger, which was a 6 one-hour film series on the wildlife of the subcontinent. Suhail went on to work on many more films for the BBC, most recently a 3-parter called Tigers, Spy in the Jungle, and that was telecast in the UK in 2009. Suhail has provided custom guiding for many different individuals and groups, including Metropolitan Museum of Art, Textile Museum, and, of course, for us. And we, Suhail, are so happy to have you here with us to hear more about what's new and what's going on in India. So over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to join us this afternoon. Now, I'm really pleased and excited to present to you Natural Habitat Adventures Grand Indian Wildlife Adventure. We've been running this trip in India for many, many years now, and it really has evolved to an excellent combination of different habitats and different wildlife. In fact, over the minutes, I will be taking you through the entire itinerary and presentation on the Grand Indian Wildlife Adventure, which essentially covers 3 national parks across central India and the northeastern part of India as well. And the wildlife we will be seeing while on this journey is, of course, hopefully, the Royal Bengal tiger, wonderful species of deer, the spotted deer, swamp deer, sambar, etc. Of course, monkeys, as you can see on the bottom right of your screen, and the animal on the left-hand side of the screen is actually the Asiatic wild dog. Very different from, very different looking from their African cousins, but really behave in very similar fashion. They hunt in packs, very, very active, and very vocal as well. So, these are a few of the animals one will be able to see. Of course, we'll also be able to see, especially if the trips are in the summer months, sloth bear, different species of jungle cat, as well as crocodile. Now, as we move from central India to the eastern part of India and head to a park called Kaziranga National Park, we will have the pleasure of viewing and spending time with the Asiatic one-horned rhino. This amazing animal, over around 1,600 of them left in Kaziranga at the moment, really a conservation success, weighs over a ton and move very, very quickly. And they're a fascinating animal to watch. Apart from the big mammals, of course, India is really a bird watcher's paradise and hotspot. We have many different species of birds, close to actually 5,000 if you were to look at the bird species in the high Himalaya to the plains of central India and South India. And many of these species are actually quite similar to what we have in Africa as well. So for those of you who've been to Africa, you probably will recognize the blue jay on the left-hand, the top left-hand corner of your screen. On the right-hand side, you have the paradise flycatcher, which are also found in Africa. The hoopoe, of course, as well. So many similarities between the African and Asian bird species. Now, the trip really begins in New Delhi, which is where you fly into from the US, and we have one night actually in New Delhi, but many of our guests arrive a day prior. So essentially, you're looking at spending 2 nights in New Delhi And New Delhi is my home. It's a wonderful city, very historic. Um, in fact, interestingly, New Delhi was the seventh city which was built by the British. Prior to New Delhi being built, we had 6 other older cities which we will actually be visiting. The image on the screen at the moment is of Kutub Minar, which is one of the earliest cities in Delhi. Delhi is also the capital of India, and this is where our adventure begins. From Delhi, we will be heading south. We'll be going down to Bandhavgarh National Park, and we'll be actually flying to a city called Jabalpur, and which is in the heart of central India. And from Jabalpur, we will drive for 4 hours, approximately 4 hours, 30 minutes to Bandhavgarh National Park. Now, Bandhavgarh is a fascinating tiger reserve, close to 500 square kilometers. It's a small park, but it has been, it's really, a hotspot for viewing tigers, simply because Bandhavgarh has been open for tourism since the early 80s. And many of the cats got habituated to vehicles and tourists, and the cubs thereafter, which they had, have also been really habituated and are very, very comfortable with vehicles. The photograph on your screen at the moment, you see this wonderful tiger marking its territory. It's sort of smelling the scent and then rubbing its glands against this tree. And if one's lucky, one will be able to see similar sights as this. In Bandhavgarh, we would be staying at the Eco Lodge, a wonderful eco lodge, very comfortable, great food, wonderful rooms, and also not too far from the park gate, so very, very conveniently located. And our game viewing in Bandhavgarh, as well as at Kana and Kaziranga, which I'll be sort of talking about later on, essentially is centered around 2 game drives a day. The morning game drive normally would start, depending on the time of the year, about 6 a.m. And we would head into the park and spend about 4 to 5 hours in the park with a packed breakfast, and then come back to the lodge about 11, 11:30, 12. We then have a break for midday break where we would freshen up, have lunch, and get some rest. Or go for a nature walk, and then head back into the park, about 2:33 for a couple of hours. So essentially, we would be actually doing 2 game drives a day. Now, the photograph on your slide here shows a Gypsy, which is a Suzuki vehicle, which is what we will be using for photography, for the game viewing. And as you can see, it's quite comfortable for photography. We have 4 guests per vehicle plus our guide. And this photograph here actually shows you getting very close to a pair of jackals in Bandhavgarh. While we're out on our game drives in Bandhavgarh and in Kana, we might come across these wonderful park elephants going out patrolling. These park elephants are domesticated elephants, and are really very, very key to conservation in our wild places. The forest department use these elephants to patrol, to monitor what's happening with the wildlife. For example, if there's a tigress which has got cubs and very young cubs, normally the park authorities would have an elephant sort of nearby to just keep an eye on the cubs, make sure the cubs are doing well. Or, God forbid, if there's a poaching incident or there's a scare about poachers being in the park, then the elephants are going to go out with their armed guards patrolling. So they play a very, very important part in protecting our wild places. One can see these wonderful deer, the spotted deer or the axis. They're also called cheetal. The deer on your screen at the moment, as you can see, are in velvet. You can see their antlers. And this happens in early winter, and a magnificent deer to see. Of course, we have the wonderful monkeys, the langurs. They're called the Hanuman Langurs. We have actually 2 species of monkeys which you will see. You will see the Hanuman Langurs, which are the black-faced monkeys, which are on your screen at the moment. a mother and a baby at the moment, and very, very active, very, very social, and great fun watching. I mean, you could spend at least half an hour watching them and really enjoy yourselves. But we also have the the Rhesus Macaques, which are a more sort of brown color and slightly more shyer than the langurs. And but we do see them as well when we are in the national parks of Bandhavgarh, Kanha, and actually Kaziranga. And of course, while we're out looking for game, we're also looking out for tigers. And on your screen now, you can see the tip of a tail of the tiger behind this thick sort of vegetation. And this slide was, I really wanted to share this slide with you to show you and actually set the expectations on tiger viewing. There will be times when you will see the cats in bush like this, but very, very often you will then see them emerge out of the bush and get a clear view of them as they walk by your vehicle. And these cats are wonderful cats. They are, amazing. They are, as I mentioned in Bandhavgarh specifically, they're very habituated, so they're very comfortable being around vehicles, and they love actually using the roads and pathways because, especially in the winter morning when there's dew on the ground, they find it more comfortable walking on a dry, sort of dryish gravel road versus wet grass. And one will have great opportunities to photograph them both in Kanha and Bandhavgarh. So after spending 3 nights in Bandhavgarh, where we do morning and afternoon game drives looking for tigers and other game, we then drive you further south to Kanha National Park. Kanha National Park is an amazing park. It's a long drive. This particular drive is 6 hours, but it's a drive through wonderful countryside, great forests, and wonderful villages. So when we transfer you from Bandhavgarh to Kanha, we'd be using Toyota Innovas, which again will seat 3 guests or a maximum of 4 per vehicle, and we'd be carrying packed lunch, and we'd be making stops en route. To, for example, if it's a Wednesday and there's a weekly market on, we'd stop at the weekly market so you could sort of, get an experience of walking through a little village market in central India. Sometimes we get lucky to see a wedding on the road, and again we stop and take photographs of that. So while it is a transfer, it is also an experience and journey. Now, Kanha National Park is one of India's sort of best 9-inch national parks. It's a large park, close to 1,900 square kilometers, and it was one of the earliest parks which was set up in India. In fact, it was the second park which was set up after Jim Corbett National Park. And Kanha really is one of my favorite parks because it's got great landscape, wonderful valleys, meadows, and great wildlife as well. In Kanha, we'll be staying at a wonderful lodge called Bagtola. Bagtola is run by a great couple, Eric and his wife. Now, Eric has been in Kanha for over 30 years. He's an amazing naturalist and conservationist. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to spend time with Eric over the next 3 days and his team and explore, the wonderful wildlife of Kanha. The landscape in Kanha is a bit different from Bandhavgarh, while similar. Again, here we have the sal tree, which are the evergreen hardwood tree. But you have larger meadows in Kanha versus Bandhavgarh. While on a drive, one can see wonderful peacock, the gore. This amazing animal really is, it's the largest wild ox in the world. It weighs over a ton and moves very, very quickly. And Kanha has a huge population of the gore. And in fact, recently we had about 20 of those gore moved from Kanha to Bandhavgarh. So if one's lucky, we could see them in Bandhavgarh as well. But if not, we will definitely see them in Kanha. And they are really magnificent animals. We also get to see an endemic species of deer, which you see on your screen at the moment. It's called the swamp deer, or the Barasinga. Now, this is the hard ground Barasinga, which is only found in Kanha, and it's a great conservation success. In the 60s, there were only approximately 20 Barasinga left in Kanha, and the Forest Department and the Wildlife Department, started a concerted effort to conserve them, and you'd be pleased to know they're close to 200 now in Kanha. So, a grand success story. Of course, while these deer are larger than the spotted deer, which we saw earlier on the presentation, they're also obviously great food for wild dogs. As you can see on your screen, you can see a small pack of wild dogs, 4 of them on the edge of a tank. The wild dogs will actually hunt the Barasinga as well as spotted deer or monkeys. And of course, tigers do hunt them as well. So great tiger food too. Now, Kanha as a park has great diversity. You of course have tigers. As we saw, we have wild dogs there as well. In the summer we get to see sloth bear too, and also a great park for leopard. Now, the chances of seeing leopard in Kanha are higher than Bandhavgarh for the simple reason because Bandhavgarh is a smaller park, and because it has such a high density of tigers, the leopards are really pushed to the edge. Kanha, on the other hand, being a larger park, has a good population of tigers, but also a fairly healthy population of leopards, which, if you're lucky, we will be able to see as well. So after spending 6 nights at these 2 wonderful national parks of Bandhavgarh and Kanha, we then drive 4.5 hours to an airport called Raipur, and we fly east to the city of Calcutta, where we actually just overnight. It's a transit night. We'll be staying at Sheraton, ITC Sheraton, which is not too far from the airport. And the next morning we will fly from Calcutta further east to Assam. Assam, as you can see, is on the easternmost part of India, bordering Myanmar and the state of Arunachal Pradesh, and also a bit of Bhutan. Assam is a fascinating state. It's where you have wonderful tea plantations. We have Assam tea coming in from there, but we also have some great national parks. And we're going to be flying from Calcutta to an airport called Jorhat, and then driving to Kaziranga National Park. Now, Kaziranga National Park, for me, is one of India's finest national parks. It really is, I would say, it's the Ngorongoro of Indian parks because of the sheer diversity of the wildlife in Kaziranga. But prior to arriving in Kaziranga, after we land in Jorhat, we're going to be visiting a tea plantation, experiencing the life of a planter, going and seeing how tea is plucked, but also experiencing the life of the community as we drive through from Jorhat to Kaziranga. As you can see, the ladies are harvesting the fields. We'll also be driving by a couple of rivers like the Brahmaputra and seeing life on the river as well. Chance to interact with children when we're on this little excursion. And also, if lucky, see some ladies weaving a sari. So again, getting a really good sense of the destination. When we arrive in Kaziranga, we're going to be staying at the Biflu River Lodge. It's a wonderful lodge with rooms sort of built around paddy fields and ponds. All the rooms are raised, and it really is the best place to be staying in Kaziranga. Kaziranga National Park, as I mentioned, is an amazing place. It's has got so much of diversity in wildlife, from from the Asiatic rhino to the wild elephant, to hula gibbons, to of course tigers. But you'll be awfully lucky to see a tiger in Kaziranga for the simple reason because Kaziranga has very, very dense elephant grass, and the jungle is quite thick there. So tigers, while being there, are not often seen. But there's so much more to see from a big mammal perspective. I mean, wild water buffalo, We also do sometimes go out on a boat ride looking out for Gangetic dolphin as well. Now, on your screen at the moment, you're seeing one of our game-viewing vehicles, the Suzuki Gypsies, going into the park. And there again, you see one of the park elephants coming back after harvesting his fodder, his food for the day. And these park elephants, again, here in Kaziranga, play a very, very important role in protecting the park and helping in conservation, as they do in Kana and Balnagar as well. While on safari in Kaziranga, again, we will be doing the morning and afternoon safaris here as well. We will, of course, get to see many one-horned rhinos, these great animals. While they're very similar to their African cousins, but also quite different. As you can see, these rhinos have, a plate and armor, skin of armored plating, number one, and also number two, the horns are slightly smaller. But they weigh over a ton, and again, very, very quick on their feet. Now, the rhino conservation story in Kaziranga is absolutely fascinating. As I mentioned earlier, we have over 1,600 rhinos, Asiatic rhinos in Kaziranga. It's one of our biggest hotspots for the rhinos, and the park authorities really are very, very passionate and love their wildlife. In fact, Kaziranga is one of the national parks in India where the park authorities are allowed to shoot first and ask questions later if they see poachers. And this sort of ruling and way of patrolling the park has ensured that they lose very few rhinos to poaching. As we are in the park, we also get to see wild elephants. We also do go on a short elephant safari, walking through the 16 feet elephant grass, looking out for rhinos and getting actually quite close to them. So this is also a fascinating way of seeing wildlife in Kaziranga. Now, this photograph on your screen at the moment, as you can see, a group of elephants out on safari in the mornings in the grasslands of Kaziranga with the deer in the foreground and the wonderful mountains in the background. And as I mentioned, you could get very, very close to the rhinos while on elephant back. We will also go and visit the many of the watchtowers in Kaziranga. From the watchtowers, we get to see some great bird life, take some unique photographs, and really also get a great sense of this amazing national park. We'll also be walking in parts of the park where we will go looking for birds as well as looking for hula gibbons. And watching these gibbons is an amazing experience. Now, once we are back at the lodge, over the 3 days in Kaziranga, we'll be doing the morning and afternoon game drives. We'll be doing an elephant safari, as we saw a few minutes ago. We'll be also, depending on the season, doing a short boat ride looking for Gangetic dolphins. We also will have the opportunity to interact with the elephants at the lodge, feeding the elephants, watching it bathe, and as well in the evenings, enjoying some wonderful tribal music and dance from the local tribal community, and really interacting with the locals as well. The locals are so hospitable. They're wonderful. They always have a smile on their faces and really always welcoming. From Kaziranga, we will drive back to Guwahati, which is the capital city of Assam. It's a 4.5-hour drive. And we will then fly back to Delhi and be overnight in Delhi. For those who are leaving us today, they will fly out the next day. But we also have an extension to Agra to go and view the wonderful Taj Mahal, and it's a one-night extension there to go and see the Taj Mahal both at sunset and sunrise, as well as going and visiting the amazing Agra Fort as well. So this, in a nutshell, was the Great Indian Wildlife Adventure, and look forward to sort of welcoming you to Wild India and answering any questions you may have.
Well, thank you so much, Suhail. It's always interesting to hear what you have to say, and we have several good questions here, and I encourage the audience listening, if you have questions, type those in now. We do have time to answer most all of your questions while we have Suhail with us. So there's a question here about the vehicles. What vehicles are used on the 4 to 5 hour drive between the lodges?
Rightly. We use Toyota Innovas. They are sort of not SUVs but MUVs, very, very comfortable. And as I mentioned, we normally have 3 per vehicle. You have one passenger near the driver and 2 in the middle. But extremely comfortable. We've been using these vehicles for long transfers in India for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Now, this is probably the most popular question that we've received today, and I bet you could even guess what it is. The question is, what is the best time of year to go?
Right, okay. So the way I look at it, the Indian parks operate slightly differently to other parks, for example, in Africa. In Africa, your parks are open year-round. In India, the parks are actually open from early October through to June. Now, the way we've scheduled the trips and these particular departures are in order. The way we've scheduled them gives you really the best opportunities to view wildlife, tigers and other game as well. So, for example, our first departure, if I remember correctly, is in November. We don't have a departure early in October because the parks have just opened post the rains. So it takes the naturalists and the local guides a couple of weeks to figure out what's happening with the tiger dynamics in the parks. Have the territories changed, etc. So by the time end October, early November comes, the intelligence on the ground, the bush telegraph is fairly accurate, and we know where to go looking for these wonderful cats. So from November through to April is actually a good time.
All right. And is there a migration period in these parks similar to what one would find in the migrations in Africa?
Well, the only migration we actually have, interestingly, is in Kaziranga, but that migration is a local migration. It happens in the monsoons. In fact, it's happening now as we speak in Kaziranga because, Kaziranga has very, very heavy monsoons, and there's an annual flood which happens in Kaziranga. So, prior to the flood happening, a lot of the bigger mammals, rhinos, elephants, in fact also actually all of the animals, even the small sort of porcupines, monkeys, they migrate from the low ground, the plains to the higher ground. So actually that's the only migration you have, but that's something which we don't see. But otherwise all the wildlife is locally found and stays within the national parks.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you for mentioning those floods. We actually had someone asking about that, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. Now, we have someone asking about single travelers and if a single supplement is required.
Yes, we do encourage single travelers, and in fact, in most of our trips, we will have quite a few single travelers. On the single supplement, I'm sorry, I'll have to actually get back. I don't have that information with me at the moment.
No worries. We can actually get back and get an answer for that, so you don't need to worry about that. We will take care of it. What about the groups? How many fellow travelers would one be with on a trip like this?
The great part about Natural Habitat Adventures is the groups are not large. On an average, you will have between 8 to 10 guests per group. And the reason we keep the group small and intimate is because we'd like each member of the group to really get a chance to interact with the guides we have on the ground and really have a good experience. I mean, once you start going beyond 10 to 11 or beyond 12, then the groups get slightly unmanageable, especially in an Indian context.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. All right, well, I am not seeing, whoops, we just got one more question. I will make this the last question, and anything else that comes in we can take care of offline. There is a question here. It says, are the parks on a bird migration flyway, and when does that migration take place? So we have a birder.
Yeah, so you have, what happens in India is, in the winter months, you have a lot of winter migrants coming down from the Tibetan plateau, and they come down to warmer climate in India, and we will definitely see, for example, in Kana and in Kaziranga, you will see the ruddy shell duck or the Brahmini duck, which comes down. You will see a couple of species of cranes, actually. You have many other, also apart from the winter migrants, you have many local migrants as well coming through the national park. So you will of course have the endemics, but you will also have local migrants as well as the winter migrants coming through, especially Kana and Kaziranga.
Okay, thank you. All right. The birder says thank you. We appreciate the question. That's great. So several are asking about the replay. We will get that replay out to everyone. And so I think we will stop with the questions now, and I will turn it back over to you, Sahil, for closing comments. Anything else you might like to share with our audience before we go?
Yes, one other interesting story, ladies and gentlemen. It's a joyous but also a sad story. We just had years ago, there's this amazing tigress called Machli. She passed away, and she was 19. She's sort of on record being the oldest wild tiger to have to reach the age of 19. And she was found. She lived in a park not in central India but in Rajasthan called Ranthambore, and she sort of sired many litters. But just to let you know, when she passed away, it was an amazing sight because you had, she was cremated. You had the forest department. You had locals coming and placing flowers, and paying their respects to this wonderful animal and this amazing tigress who had really, really given that particular park many of the younger, tigers which exist today. So India has a very, very close association with its wildlife. So do come and visit us soon.
Sahil, thank you so much for being with us today, for staying up. I know it's late in the evening for you, and we appreciate that you stayed up to enlighten us about what is going on in India. And with that, we will say good day and conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.